Equine health is our business. Horses and education are our passion.
Welcome to the EquiConnect podcast. Here we have case-based conversation and talk about interesting news and information with the goal of sharing knowledge, focusing on equine health.
This podcast is not a substitute for regular and emergency veterinary care. Our purpose is to inform and educate horse people, not to diagnose and treat medical conditions without a valid veterinary client-patient relationship.
In this episode of our EquiConnect podcast, we're diving into the topic of U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods, specifically how they might not actually have a major impact we would expect on veterinary products. While tariffs are often seen as a major disruptor for industries, in this case, the veterinary field might be more insulated than we think. From medical supplies to pharmaceuticals, we'll explore why these goods may remain largely unaffected by changing trade policies, and what that means for animal care across North America. So if you're wondering whether these tariffs will lead to shortages or price hikes for veterinary goods, stick around. We've got the answers for you. Thank you, Mike, for joining us today so we can answer these questions that people might have.
It's an important and timely subject, and I think like a lot of us, when we're hearing about the tariffs, there are so many unknowns, but we thought we'd take a few minutes and just talk about how the tariffs could, the big emphasis on the word could, impact the delivery of veterinary care in Canada and Ontario.
Well, thank you for that. So let's dive right in. How will tariffs affect medication pricing for everyday medications such as Prevequine, Prascend, Bute, or Banamine?
So the good news is initially not much. And so the government, with this first, this raft of tariffs as of March 4th, the government said they're doing counter tariffs on select items, and that if the tariffs remain over a period of time, there's a whole bunch of new tariffs coming later on in March. But for what we know now, there's a list on one of the Canadian government websites of every item. And I literally looked through everything just to see if there's anything. And I didn't see anything that would affect us directly. I think medications will be one of the last things that would be tariffed, just because a lot of the things that we use are also used in the human field. So I don't think anybody wants to get into a price war or a tariff war on, medicines. What I saw that affects the horse industry right now is, American-made Saddlery, for example, or horse blankets. They're going to get a tariff. And then I look deeper to see, some of the supplements that we get from the States, like Platinum Performance, for example. There are some, who knows when you really dig into it, because they talk about, certain supplement products made from grains or eggs or dairy products. There may be a slight amount of tariffs, but by and large, I didn't see anything that affects us now as of when we're talking.
Oh, that's great. That's so nice to hear. Will the tariffs affect McKee-Pownall pricing on services? So I think specifically people are wondering, will prices of services be going up?
So every year we look at increasing our prices, and we pretty well keep them with inflation. There are times like we did this year where we're like, gas is so up and down. And so we didn't change our call fee from 2024. We're like, it's tough in the horse business. It's getting more and more expensive to have horses. So we looked at a lot of our services and like, what can we keep the same? There are things that cost us money that we have to increase the fees. Like we buy medications and the manufacturers increase it, so we have to increase it. Salaries go up. We try to keep everybody current with inflation. So, I think we increased things like 2.6%, which was the rate of inflation as of December 2024 for Ontario. But unless gas prices just skyrocket, which I doubt, because if this is going to cause a bit of a recession, it actually might lower gas prices. So, but there's a lot of unknowns there, but nothing immediately comes to mind. As I said, what we're more worried about is the average consumer, all of us. If we're going to have to pay tariffs on things we're getting from the States, if our economy is being hit by layoffs because certain industries are being affected. I think it's just going to be harder for all of us because just everything is going to be, more expensive, like groceries and, other things that, may not permit us to, spend so much on our horses. And so I think that's our biggest concern. I think everybody's concerned. And, so what we're trying to do is like, what's best, for your horse. And, that's why we're trying to keep some of our prices as much as we can where they are. For example, we've lowered our prices of our MRI. We have specials coming out for our gastroscope. That's a really significant savings. So we're finding these opportunities where we can find savings and then pass them along.
Which is great. I think, as you said, everybody's concerned. So it's great to hear your insight on that. And I guess kind of flipping back to about medications, are you worried at all about any medications that we get from the US becoming harder to obtain?
I do, and this is actually outside of tariffs. So when we look at the horse world, so you've got all of these, species, dog, cats, cattle, even aquaculture, fish, poultry, swine. Equine is the smallest industry in Canada. So when all of the, the drug companies are getting together, or the manufacturers, aquaculture is bigger than equine. Some of the products, like Revolution, for example, I've heard just what they sell in Revolution, the flea and tick medication is bigger than the whole equine market together, just one product.
Oh, wow.
So what happens is for a company to sell a medication in Canada, there are regulatory, hoops they have to go through, and there's a cost to it, and it's a significant cost. And so they have to look at it as the market big enough for us to recoup our investment. And sadly, it isn't. And so when products come up for renewals, or if they want to bring in a new product, they look at the size of the Canadian equine industry and they go, well, we're going to have to invest, X $100,000. There's no way we're going to get that paid back. And so they just don't. And so we're fighting, I would say, almost on an annual basis. There's one or two items that are not available in Canada anymore. It's hard. Sometimes they come back, or sometimes there's another formulation that we can use. So this is a problem. It's not a tariff problem. This is just a size of our industry problem in Canada.
Wow, yeah, I guess you're right. There's so much more that goes into it. There's the tariff situation, but also just in general, kind of a nice opportunity to share struggles that can be just on a more normal basis.
Yeah, a couple of years ago or last year, for the longest time, we couldn't get Prevequine, which we use almost on a daily basis when we do nerve blocks on horses to help diagnose lamenesses, if we want to numb an area, if we have to suture it in an emergency or what have you. And then we're like, well, how can we do that? And so, we were, really making sure if we can use that for a case so we didn't waste it. And so that's a challenge. I just got an email this morning that a certain product is going to be back ordered indefinitely. And it's one that horse owners are using all the time. I don't want to say the name because it hasn't been announced officially, but we're like, all right, let's try to buy as much as we can that is available. So at least we have it, because will it come back? We don't know. That's always our concern, is they take something off, there's a back order, maybe there's a production delay, and then it's like we never have it again. That happened with Adequine. I think we couldn't get Adequine for about 5 or 6 years. Then right, for some reason, they found a way to come back into Canada, but we thought, that's a great product, and we're never going to have it again.
Absolutely. If you have any questions that have not been answered in this podcast regarding tariffs, please reach out to your McKee-Pownall clinic, and we'd be happy to answer any further questions that you have.
This podcast is not a substitute for regular and emergency veterinary care. Our purpose is to inform and educate horse people not to diagnose and treat medical conditions without a valid veterinary client-patient relationship.